courageously defied the Constitution, and done so despite many petitions that suggest many petitions from Mrs. Gaddy's family that suggest that indeed she's being wronged in the whole process against her, that she is a victim of process, a victim not of due process, but perhaps we could say of undue process. She is a political prisoner as we speak right now in southeast Tennessee, just northwest of Hamilton County. And her offense is that she has stood on her rights, the rights to say no, the right to have her castle uninvaded and untrampled upon by any authority, absent the single thing that gives an official authority over private property. And that, as Kelly Gaddy, her son, will tell us, is what? What is the thing that gives the instrument or the key, Kelly Gaddy, that gives an authority the power, the means of coming upon an unwilling property owner's land? What is that power?
Well, the situation is we've got a right, according to our Constitution, the United States of America, and the Bill of Rights. Article 4 states the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and persons or things to be seized. That's our rights that we stand on. And as citizens, if you don't stand up on your rights, you're going to lose them. So people, we've got to stand up on these issues. And, my mother, Carol, has been illegally incarcerated by a judge, Thomas W. Graham, currently in the jail right now on basically an illegal order, because we're standing on the Constitution to not allow these city officials to come in on our property. They haven't shown proof why they want to be coming in on the property. They haven't shown the cause in the court situation, and it's just an egregious order that's violating her rights as a citizen of the United States. And I want to just compliment David here taking this cause up, because it is for the people of this country to be aware of what's going on. But currently, right now, the major outcry right now is for the release of Miss Gaddy because of these egregious orders from this Judge Graham that's over this case currently.
Now, this case has been going on for just about 2 years, and the whole thing began with a sworn statement by Mayor Dwayne Land, who recently won re-election. He is a major landlord in Dunlap who runs many budget trailer homes as landlord. And so he has a great interest in the housing market, especially the low-end housing market. Your family's house is upper or middle end, higher middle or upper end housing. It's an older house that's been restored by your mother and your dad Thomas's efforts over many years. And you, Kelly, you are a carpenter and a tradesman. Is that right? So, and you've done a lot of the work there.
Oh yeah.
Now we want to ask a question about this house. Is it a house that's about to fall down? When Mayor Land signed his initial statement, he said effectively that this house is a danger to the public, it's a danger to the residents, and it has to be inspected or torn down under the police powers of the city, under the health, safety, and welfare claims of interest by the city, which of course it does have. Now, is the house about to fall down? Is it a shamble? Is it a wreck, as some of his rentals appear to be?
Absolutely not. This is a false narrative that they have taken in this case and perpetuated this false narrative all the duration is 2.5 years. This is the same claim that they claim every time somebody confronts them about the truth. They say, oh, well, they didn't get the permits. They scave on the truth to try to put out another lie there. So permits had nothing to do with it. And it's just a travesty. And when we're exposing the liars there, the city officials, particularly, the Mayor Dwayne Land, particularly Stephen Greer, who's taken up this case, which what he should
He's
have.
the city attorney.
That's correct.
Engaged by contract.
Which he should have done. And I'm claiming that they have violated their own Ordinance 88 of the city charter, which states there's a due process procedure that must be followed by city officials. This violation by these city officials created a jurisdictional issue called exhaustion of lower remedies. So they have absconded even going to that process. What they did is Mayor Land initiated a lawsuit against our family. And to quote Mayor's words, he said, "I deem this house unlivable and demand you tear this house down. And if you do not, I will sue you." Okay. City Attorney Greer violated Ordinance 8 by not explaining to Mr. Land that there is a due process procedure in the city charter that must be followed to not infringe upon the people. Mr. Greer not only failed to advise Mayor, he took it upon himself to proceed with this frivolous lawsuit that the Gaddys were forced to defend against and file the truth of the wrongs that have been committed here.
Well, let's just back up for a second. The whole question of exhaustion of as you call them, lower remedies, it's also referred to as exhaustion of administrative remedies. In other words, if the civil government has a claim against someone, it has to start at the proper place. In this case, the city government is bound by the charter, which is the legislature's law. It's called private law.
Correct.
To Dunlap. And so that law keeps disputes under the ordinance out of the court system, and it creates a court system for the town, right? In the divided, we have three parts of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. And the judicial branch of Dunlap is the city court. And that's the venue in which this case should have initially been filed.
Correct.
And you said that in your filings. Is that right, Kelly?
Right. Yeah, it was filed.
And that was not done. And because that was not done, you're saying there is a procedural fault, and the procedural fault offends your mother, Mrs. Gaddy, who's in jail.
Correct.
Because she did not have a chance to debate and discuss this at the lowest level, right?
Exactly.
Effectively in the administration of the city government.
Right. See, all the city, the building inspector is supposed to inform the commissioners. All right, commissioner sends a letter to the residents, say there may be an issue here, come in for a hearing. Okay, that's never happened. Okay, and that's probably a month due law process that's supposed to do. And they immediately filed a lawsuit against us. See, they've jumped this procedure to protection for the people of the city and county to initiate a lawsuit, egregious lawsuit.
And the reason that the city court has to be the place where this is heard initially is because the legislature doesn't want its courts, of which Chancery is one and of which Circuit is another. It doesn't want its courts to be clogged with private problems, and that's because towns are created by private law in the Tennessee Code, that they should settle within themselves their own disputes. And this is a dispute, you're saying, Kelly, that should have been handled administratively within the government without cluttering the dockets of these important judges, such as Thomas Graham.
Absolutely. And by Stephen Greer's actions of initiating a lawsuit and not going the route of according to his city charter as city attorney, has, in my opinion, committed fraud upon the court. He has interjected this into the court system, causing these judges to have to hear this case, this frivolous case, with no basis. But yet it seems like with the current Judge Graham, he's allowed this process to go on by, abiding by what Greer wants, but he's denied the Gaddys any opportunity to argue anything or show any kind of proofs in open court. He has almost kind of just stopped us from having our voice heard. And, Miss Gaddy, my mother, Carol, attempted to do that on a hearing that was set to be heard on one of our filings. And that was when she was previously thrown in jail for 2 days. Judge Graham did it. This was our first appearance before Judge Graham. So we have no issue with Graham. This was our first experience as his interchange.
Well, now she was violating the decorum of the court, Kelly, by pointing to the judge and saying, you'll spend 10 years in jail under a Title 42 lawsuit, which is something I think she's filed.
That actually happened after the fact. See, the judge accused her of not leaving the well of the court. Well, the whole point of her being there was to argue the case. Well, we know what happened behind the scenes under ex parte communications, that Greer informed the judge not to let her say anything in court. And that's exactly what happened. The judge didn't want her to say word. And that's against her rights of due process.
Okay, so, well, you're bringing up a term. Ex parte communications means, just for the listener who hasn't followed these details closely, illicit and unjust dealings between a judge and one side in a dispute without the other side being present. That it's illegal, it's unethical to have ex parte communications. If there's anything to be said of any substantive matter in a judge's presence, both sides have to be there, not just one.
That's correct.
It's a common mistake, a blunder I've had eyewitness occasion to see in Tennessee courts. Sad to say.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So she spent 2 days in jail earlier, and your mother is a very health conscious person. She's a very healthy and strong person physically. Kelly, how can you say something to our listener about paint the picture of what she's like in the jail in Sequatchie County? How's she doing? What does she look like? What is she wearing, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, right now she's not doing too good health wise. Right now, because she's been, deprived of her nutrients,
her supplements,
vitamins, supplements. That's correct. She does not take synthetic drugs by nothing at all. It's all natural means. And of course, I did deliver a bag of natural new products. I went to give them to her, and they accepted it, but she said they had to get it referred, all that mess inside the jail. So I don't know if she's actually been able to take them yet or not. Understanding is her potassium levels were real low, and she was suffering from a strong headache across her forehead that day I visited with her, and just in tears. And so it's definitely it's taking a toll upon her health.
And of course, the institutional food in the jail includes white bread, which of course would be anathema to someone of your mother's disposition.
Yeah. We never eat white bread. It's always wheat bread. I mean, I'm telling you, we're healthy conscious.
And you are her counselor, right? She doesn't have an attorney, but you are, if she's defending herself and acting pro se for herself, you are her counsel. Is that right?
I'm her legal. Yes, sir.
And you're a carpenter.
I am a carpenter. Unfortunately, I have been thrown into this judicial process. I've had to, study a lot to help her process this stuff through. Most of all the filings I've actually physically typed myself. She's wrote a lot of them up. I've actually physically typed them up according to the statute.
Well, the listener
that they will require.
Kelly Gaddy, the listener wants to know, what's the big deal? Why don't you just encourage your mother? Look, Mom, just go ahead and say it's okay. They're not there to search for anything. They're not there to search for a dead body or stolen bullion. They're there just to see if the structure is okay. Why don't you convince your mother to do that, Kelly?
Well, we went ahead on our own and got a outside construction engineer inspection of the house to prove our case. And based on that, I think you've already had it advertised. It shows 100% construction process is correct. The lies that they're perpetrating here, that they need to come in and do an inspection, is erroneous. What it is, people have suffered from this in high school. When you got a bully, okay, you got a bully in school that approaches you. What if you give that bully their right? It's only going to get worse, okay? Since there's a fraud position here where they've denied lower remedies first, administrative remedies first, they've absconded in doing that. To give them their right, what they're asking for, to come in and tromp on our house and videotape surveillance inside our house, because the judge asked them that they could either videotape or take pictures, whatever they want to do while they're in that house. Okay, our house has been broken into the last time these officials come out and claim that they have an issue with our property. And we suffered a lot of damages based on that. And so we're not about to let them again willingly. It's our free will choice to exit them out of there. We can allow anybody in there we want to.
And because there seems to be personal enmity and kind of a personal aggravation against your family, it's possible that if they did make an inspection, that someone could injure you by planting drugs or planting a little baggie of cocaine somewhere, and then someone report later, oh, we think there are drugs in the house, and then they search for it, and then they find it.
Yeah.
I think because there's personal animus involved here by the mayor, and maybe even by Stephen Greer and possibly by the judge, that you're vulnerable to being set up in some pernicious way.
Absolutely.
I would think that kind of suspicion would not be unwarranted.
Right. Is absolutely. That's a good indicator right there.
Okay. So you say we can't allow an inspection because even though it would not find anything wrong with the house, because there is seemingly a personal hatred against this defiant woman who speaks your mind, Kelly Gaddy, Carol Gaddy, your mother.
Our family has been there since the 90s, and anything that's gone wrong against the people, we have exposed it. We have that sewage issue over there, and on the new greenway that they just put in, but yet they never addressed the sewage issue of the raw sewage bubbling out of these manholes out there at the walkway. You know, it's
is that
terrible.
near your house?
Yeah.
Why do you care about that?
It's across the creek. So when the high water level comes up, there's sewage bubbling out, and the whole area is permeated. You don't supposed to be breathing raw sewage smells in the air. Okay, and we reported that. So we believe this actions for Mayor Dwayne Land is just a vindication to get back at us because of what we exposed.
But why would a mayor care that someone reports something to a government agency? People are always reporting things to government agencies. Government agencies have their phone numbers out there. Call us if you see a problem. Call us if you see a lawbreaker. Why would the mayor care that you said, hey, TDEC, I guess it's TDEC, the Tennessee Department of Environmental and Conservation,
Agriculture, or somebody.
Why would he be offended that you would do that if it's near your house, purportedly in the city limits? Why would the mayor be upset at that?
Well,
that doesn't seem very reasonable.
Yeah, it does seem reasonable. It does, but they try to hide things that are wrong, and they will not admit to the wrong. And so if you expose that, they get very angry and agitated and want to get you out of there or kill you or whatever. That's the mentality there. You know, that bully attitude of bullying you and say, I'm going to do anything I want to you, and we'll show you, we'll prove it.
The General Assembly passed in the last session, Kelly Gaddy, a bill sponsored by Senator Frank Nicely in your favor, a very innocuous, harmless sort of bill that didn't meet any opposition. And it did what? What was the result of that measure? And it was in your favor, in your mother's favor.
That's correct. We were claiming that the city officials do not have jurisdiction over our property. We did our own research.
Because you're not in the city?
That's correct. They're claiming we are. We based on our facts and what we filed and what we found at the state level, they sent us the information, and it showed that there was never an annexation done of the property. Okay.
But how can that possibly be true, Kelly? Your family's house is a carbine shot away from City Hall. It's very close. You're on Main Street in the Crook in Coops Creek. You're so close. How can the city not have expanded southward as well as northward?
Well, what it is, they went through the process of doing boundary lines and so forth, but it was apparent to us that they never fully initiated through the legislative process that an annexation was done. Now, I know the rules and stuff changed as years go on and they redo things, but still, that was our evidence and our findings. And even the city charter states the property lines was never changed. See, and they've amended the city charter very often. But yet, dealing with this issue of annexation, they never amended the charter. This charter still states the city property is north of Coops Creek of the center. Our property is south of Coops Creek, and that's the way it states on the charter. So based on those evidences, we claim that they do not have jurisdiction over our property.
And implied in that claim, Kelly Gaddy, is that there's been effectively tax fraud by city government for decades on hundreds of lots, the owners of which are paying property taxes.
Correct.
But you're saying that it's very possible that many of those hundreds are not in the city, period.
Right. And when we filed these paperwork in the court, we were demanding proof. You know, it's up to the city officials to show proof of the case. And Stephen Greer never showed proof at that time. Okay. So, to me, that should have been ruled in our favor and the case should have been dismissed. But it has not. It's like a collusion over there. You got Stephen Greer with Judge Graham, and they go hand in hand with each other. And in the actions of Judge Graham, he's violated his oath of office as a judge, and we're going to ask for his recusal. We've asked it officially, and his improprieties.
It was denied in one ruling.
His improprieties that he's done against us as members of the open community and before the courts, not allowing us our due process rights to be heard in the courts. So he's pretty much stomped our voices in the court procedures and allowed Stephen Greer to continue to do his filings erroneously in errors, and we filed all our paperwork and showing these errors. But yet it was never addressed. It's never addressed for the pro se litigants, unfortunately.
Kelly Gaddy, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Kelly Gaddy is a carpenter. He's the son of Thomas and Carol Gaddy. Carol is in jail as a political prisoner in Sequatchie County, insisting on her rights to have private property, not in commerce, totally privately owned, innocently and harmlessly owned. The city is demanding an inspection, which is effectively a demand for search. And she says, you can't search without a warrant, and I do not grant permission. You have to have probable cause and a warrant. Show me the warrant, Carol Gaddy says, and now today she's in jail.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.